Example 132. Recent studies have indicated that low carbohydrate diets are at least as effective as low fat diets in reducing weight. Does it matter which low carbohydrate diet is followed? 2 samples of overweight premenopausal women were randomly assigned to either the Atkins diet or the zone diet for 1 year. At no point in the year-long study was total calorie consumption different between the 2 groups. The results of the study are summarized below. Construct the 98% confidence interval for the true difference between the weight loss amounts achieved on the 2 low-carbohydrate diets. So we have the Atkins and zone diets, and they're asking us to compare them using a 98% confidence interval for the true difference between the weight loss achieved by the 2 diets. Okay, so normally the first step in a confidence interval is to record all the data, but that's already done nice and neat for us. We have the sample sizes, the sample means, the sample standard deviation, so we'll just leave that there, and we'll jump right to step 2, which is to find our Z alpha divided by 2 value. And why am I choosing Z alpha divided by 2? Because both of these sample sizes are large. The alpha value is 2%, so it'll be Z.02 divided by 2. So in other words, we're looking for the Z.01 value. So let's go to our t-table and we'll look up 0.01 in one column and go straight to the bottom to find the Z-score that's located there. Okay, so we're looking up 0.01 in one tail, then all the way to the bottom until we find the largest number down at the bottom, which is 2.326. Okay, so we found the answer 2.326, and with that Z-score, we're going to come down and calculate our margin of error. So the margin of error formula, remember, is Z alpha divided by 2. Then we'll have the square root of, and for this part of it, we're going to put the variance for the first group divided by the sample size, plus the variance for the second group divided by its sample size. All right, now to fill those numbers in for us, we're going to take the 2.326, and then we'll have this square root. And now be careful because we're given the standard deviations here, not the variances. So we need to take those standard deviations and we need to square them. So 15.86 we'll have to square and then divide by the sample size 77. And then we'll do plus the standard deviation 11.74 squared divided by its sample size 79. Now notice I'm just taking the Atkins diet as the first group, the zone diet as the second group. I'm just treating them as they came to me in that order. It doesn't actually matter which one you put first. The conclusion would be the same. The only difference is your difference will have sometimes the opposite sign, of course, because when you subtract 2 numbers, if you subtract them one way, they might be positive, the difference. You subtract them another way, it might be negative. But the overall conclusion remains the same, so it doesn't really change the answer. We'll look at that in other videos. But for now, let's just work on this calculation. So 2.326 times the square root of 15.86 squared divided by 77 plus 11.74 squared divided by 79. And again, notice I'm not putting any special parentheses here. The order of operations in the calculator will work out just fine without anything extra put on there. So I hit enter and we have 5.207 approximately. So approximately 5.207. Okay, so now that we've calculated the margin of error, we now will take that number and add it and subtract it to our difference of the sample means. So let's do that first. Let's write that out. We're going to have the first sample mean, which is 10.34, and we'll be subtracting from it the 3.52. And then we'll subtract this error that we found, 5.207. Then we'll do the same difference between the means again, the same exact one. So minus 3.52 here, and then plus that margin of error, which is 5.207. Okay, so we fill that in. Let's work that out in our calculator. So I don't have to keep typing in the error. I'm going to store that in my calculator as a variable called x. And then I'll do this difference, which is 10.34 minus 3.52. It gives me the answer 6.82, and I'll subtract from that x. And that value works out to be 1.613. So 1.613 for the first difference. And then we'll come along and do the same thing again, the 6.82, but this time we'll add the error to it, and we end up with 12.027. Okay, so that's our interval. Now let's do the quick interpretation. We are 98% confident, right? We are 98% confident that the mean weight loss achieved by the Atkins diet minus the mean weight loss achieved by the zone diet is between 1.613 pounds and 12.027 pounds. Of course, we might look at this interval and not make sense of it just because of this statement. So what we want to do is kind of go ahead and give like a more general interpretation, which is looking at the interval and seeing that the interval is entirely positive, right? There's no zero in the interval. There's no negative numbers in the interval. Because of that, we can say that the Atkins diet has a greater weight loss achieved than the zone diet. So we're going to say that the mean weight loss achieved by the Atkins diet is greater than the mean weight loss achieved by the zone diet, or at least that's what the interval seems to indicate based on this set of data, right? And again, the reason why is because if this interval is entirely positive, it means the first mean was bigger, right? And we talked about that in another video, but let me just remind you in case this is the first one you're watching. If you take two numbers, let's just take two positive numbers, for example. Take the number 10 and subtract off 2 from it. So 2 is a smaller positive number. When you do that, you'll see the difference is 8. It's a positive difference because the first number is bigger. But if we did the subtraction in the opposite order, 2 minus 10, we see that we get a negative difference. So that's the same thing that's happening here. If the two numbers being subtracted here, right, if after the subtraction the interval is entirely positive, it indicates that the first mean was bigger. And that's true even with negative numbers, right? Let's take two negative numbers. If you have -3, that's a negative number. That's a small value, but it's not as small as, say, -6. So if I do -3 minus -6, since the smaller one is going second, if the pattern still holds, we should have a positive answer. And of course, we do get a positive answer, right? Because negative makes a positive, so it becomes -3 plus 6, and we end up with 3. And likewise, if we did it the opposite way, if we do -6 minus -3, we end up with a negative answer, and the negative answer is because, again, the first number is smaller than the second one. So remember, -6 is actually a smaller number than -3. So the pattern holds in all cases. If this interval is positive, it means that the first number was bigger than the second. And that'll even work if you mix positive and negative numbers together. So that's our interpretation then. We're going to say the Atkins diet has a greater average weight loss than the zone diet, or at least according to this study, the women did better with the Atkins diet than they did with the zone.